All right, we are here back on the Slack line with JWoww.
Wow.
And the boss.
The boss is coming!
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And we are here for our 9th episode. I think it's 9th. With Kyler Henderson.
Yes.
And Gerry Gimenez.
It's actually Gimenez.
Gimenez.
Hello.
Geraldo Gimenez.
Hello.
He is straight from Mexico, and as most of our guests do, woke up on my couch this morning and decided to be on the Slack line.
Yeah,
Nice. And he's also a dear friend of ours, and it's really good to have you around here.
And so is Kyler, of course. Kyler is here. He is a grip in the Vancouver film industry and a filmmaker. What do you do when you're not? What's your? If you're making the film for yourself, what's your thing?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't really do anything outside of gripping these days.
No. Well, if you were to be like, hey, remember when I was an artist? I'm gonna do that again.
Remember when I didn't
grip
sell
artist.
my soul?
What were
Be a
you?
grip artist, right?
What was it? What was your thing? Writing, directing? Yeah.
Writing. And I still do a lot of writing,
Yeah.
but I don't actually do the writing part, it seems like these days.
It's just all in your head.
Yeah, it's all in my
like,
head.
oh man, that's a great idea.
I tell people,
Pay someone to
Yeah, I'm
write
working
for
on this, but I
I got
haven't.
this on the go, so many projects.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I'm kind of that way sometimes. I think that's the writer's sort of mentality sometimes. Is like, you do have it on the go, man. Even if you haven't put it on paper, I mean, it's up here and it's working. And when you do get like an aha moment, you're like, oh shit, that works. And then you start putting it on paper. But
if you're like me, you get like ADD. You start so many different projects, and then you don't actually ever finish them. You just move on to the next one.
Dude, I hear you, man. I am 100%.
But you're always writing. Like, you're always just jotting notes down in your phone or whatnot.
Yeah.
It almost becomes like chaotic.
Yeah.
You can't keep track of like what's for what and what is this for. Like, I'm always writing, but I'm never writing.
You're totally right, man. I have like 6 different books of just like random notes that make no coherent sense as one thing.
Yeah.
And like a few scripts and stuff like that. But yeah, most of it is just constant thoughts that you're like, oh yeah, I have that stuff, but the real good shit is up here. It's up here. It's coming.
It's like a process of procrastination.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because sometimes all of this come along. We have Duke here a couple of weeks ago, and he said that how he actually wrote music with stuff that, or it was you, Matt, like you're just like going through old notebooks and stuff. And like you just pick up some parts of the things that you wrote in the past and
I was cleaning out we were doing a garage sale at my dad's place, and we were cleaning out like way old stuff, like stuff from when I was like 13, when I first started learning how to play guitar. And like I had like a diary of songs, like probably 50 shit songs that like a 14-year-old would write. But there are like certain lines or certain paragraphs or whatever that are like, oh, that's pretty good, I'll take that line. Or like, I can build a song off of that one thing. And you end up getting like 4 or 5 songs out of, old thoughts. It's pretty cool that way.
Mic test.
Interrupted by the mic test. This is where we go back to our thoughts from last week. I mean, I was the only one of the 4 of us that were here last week. JWoww actually has returned and mysteriously, suspiciously missing his mustache. We spoke about it, Alexis and I, last week. We're kind of, I mean, we were put off. We were talking about conspiracies a couple weeks before. JWoww didn't show up at random. He didn't tell me he wasn't showing up and left me alone here again with a guest.
Such a good co-host.
But then he called in about halfway through, and he was at the Mexico-Texas border, and they were trying to throw him out of the country. And his phone, he dropped his phone. Some random hick picked it up. What's his? Bernie, one of our listeners from before, actually. Coincidentally picked up JWoww's phone. We had a conversation with him, and JWoww just coincidentally happened to find it, and now he shows up here, sans mustache, and I'm quite certain it's JWoww's evil twin.
Man, no. To be honest, my life, it's been tough lately. I slept 2 nights ago, and I woke up this morning missing my mustache, and I don't know what happened. I really don't know. I remember lights, a spaceship, and a razor.
A razor.
That would make sense.
Oh yeah, because they
Wait.
Shave your
This is the
mustache.
so this right here is the birth of a new conspiracy. Were they trying to study your mustache?
Man, I think they are trying to stop Movember. But that's the thing, like it was never because of Movember. They got the wrong guy.
That's
sure.
true. You were just a mustache mainstay.
I'm like Movember every month.
You
but
were the
Movember.
victim of a Movember terrorist attack.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was.
There's just a group going around pinning people down and shaving their Movember mustaches.
It might be even ISIS. They don't like mustaches.
No, full beard or clean shave.
Yeah. Either,
Yeah, well, we might have to revisit that little comment on the next mic test. Yeah, we talked about conspiracy theories last week, and I mean, usually we go back and try to decipher where we maybe went wrong and apologize for comments that maybe were a little offside, but the whole thing was a talk about conspiracy theories, so there's nothing that could really be offside in that type of conversation. No. We got into like ghosts and maybe different types of afterlife and stuff like that, which was kind of fun. And I think we'll continue that conversation with Alexis or maybe some other people going forward. And maybe when JWoww decides to return, I don't think I really want to talk to his evil twin. It's really making me uncomfortable that he sans his mustache this week. I'm not really sure what to really make of it.
Oh, how long did you have a mustache for?
I didn't. The mustache had me for 2 years. Yeah.
Do you want
2
the
years.
mustache on or off?
Off, please.
Too bad.
As long as we've known him, he's had the mustache, which it's not that long, but
It's about a year and a couple months.
yeah. I figured he was a lifer.
A lifer.
Like 18 years old,
Like
he
he
was
was
the
born
only
with
guy
it.
in school that could grow a mustache,
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
had it ever since.
Mm.
Yeah, since that was very mustache. That back in those days, the 70s, it was really
Mm.
popular.
Especially in the industry you worked in, which was porn.
Yeah. The porn. Well, porn. It's yeah.
It's the Brazilian deep cut porn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might not have
We
seen
all
it.
have mustaches. If
Deep
you
cut.
see in a
Yeah,
porn
those are
film a
deep
guy
cuts.
with a mustache, he's Brazilian.
Yeah.
It's a pre-requirement.
That's
But
funny.
when you woke up, and you looked in the mirror, did you have this moment of this crisis moment? Like, what have I done, or what has happened?
Yes.
You don't even recognize
Yes,
yourself.
my girlfriend looked at me yesterday. I didn't tell her that I was going to shave. She was like, "What did you do?"
The mustache is the only reason I was dating you.
Yeah, man. And then we had our first fight. I think it was because of the
Oh,
mustache.
Because of the
man.
mustache.
Yeah, I think
It's
it
the source
was.
of all your authority.
It is, man. I have to grow that back again very soon.
Well, you had mentioned that you shed it every fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every fall, it falls down with the leaves,
Mm.
and it blooms again in spring. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
colorful. It's
It's flowering.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, it actually turns a nice auburn red as just the day before it falls. Am I wrong?
no. You're totally right. I'm unfortunately didn't take any pictures, but yeah,
It's
that's
like
what
Next time.
because when it's about to fall, I get really anxious. I don't want to see too many people until it actually falls, and then
it's like opposite hibernation.
yeah,
You go into hiding for a few days.
yeah,
I can't. Don't look at me.
yeah.
It's about to fall off. Okay, so I guess that's it for the mic test on that. So let's go to this week's topic. Usually we go from the lighter topics into the heavier ones. So
That sounds good.
Yeah, let's start with I think Kyler, you wanted to talk a little 21st century dating.
Oh man.
Yeah, and
that's really
how
nice
it's maybe
topic.
how it's maybe differed a little bit. It's interesting because Kyler, how old are you?
25 is my go-to answer.
How old are you, Kyler?
25.
Okay. So Joao and I aren't ashamed of our age, and we're both 28. Are you 29?
29.
I'm ashamed of my age.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm 29.
No, we're not.
Oh yeah,
Kyler
we're
is.
not. We're
Kyler
not.
is though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am ashamed of my age. Yeah. It's,
And Jerry-
it doesn't add up. That's
So
why.
so we're all in our late 20s, and Jerry is in his early 20s.
21 years old.
21. So it's an interesting gap, actually, I think, because we would have existed in a situation where like texting and stuff wasn't really part of the dating thing. I was talking to a friend a couple nights ago who's a woman who's younger. She's 22, I think. And I was explaining, I was like, it used to be like a terrible move to ask a girl out on a text or on an MSN message. Like if you did that, you were a loser, man. Like that, like, that was like, your buddy asks out a girl on MSN, you're like, dude.
The only thing
I'm
worse
surprised you
than
didn't say
that
no.
was to break up with a girl by message.
Right,
That
right.
was the only thing that was worse than
But now, like, it's how you meet, it's how you communicate completely all the way around. Like, even the idea of breaking up with somebody over text message still has like I'm sure, really terrible stigma. But like, if it's how
Tinder
you've
is
met,
message. Tinder is only message.
yeah,
You can't call someone by Tinder.
no,
Or send pictures of anything.
Yeah,
That's
they
true.
have
It's just
pictures,
talk.
actually.
Yeah, you
But you
can
can't
send
send.
pictures.
it's a good thing, man.
I noticed that the other day. I was like, oh,
Man, the women I talk to just that have like public Instagram accounts,
Yeah.
man, it appalls me. Like how often they get just random dick pics
Man, I don't
from
know.
random people.
Oh yeah.
Guys are
She's like, once a
guys
day.
are stupid, man.
People like what?
Why would you think that?
It's
she
a,
wants to
I
see
asked-
sex?
it's a primitive thing, man. It's a human biological primitive instinct.
stupid human.
Oh, very
do
stupid.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey everybody,
But a
come
lot of
look at
people
how
do it.
big my dick is.
So you think that's how like maybe in the caveman times when people were getting busy and just had loincloths, it was like the dating move was like, hey,
I think
just pull it to the side and
I honestly think that
Really?
psychologically that's
They were
a
doing the helicopter.
well, that's just a connection.
hey, you want to date?
to impress a
Man,
chick,
helicopter.
helicopter dig,
No, dude, but
helicopter
seriously.
dig, helicopter dig.
I think
wish
it's
I had.
such a
I
common
wish
thing,
I had.
dude. It's such a common thing to find models or people on Instagram, on social media that get so many dick pics all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly think that it's because it's just a psychological connection that you think that if the female sees your reproductive organ, then they will instantly turn on like that.
Well, I've asked a few women about this. Over the last couple of weeks, so one of them I asked, have you ever been tempted by a random dick pic? Like, have you ever got one and been like, oh, yeah, what's up? And she was like, I've definitely been tempted. Have you ever? And I was like, have you ever like, has that ever led to you having sex with that person? And she said, like, well, I've been tempted. And I was like, that's not yes or no. And she said, well, then no. And I'm like, good. Because if that works even once, if even one guy sends his, like, on an initial conversation, that's the first thing he does is send a woman a picture of his cock. And that somehow leads to him having sex with that person, then you perpetuate
The behavior.
the behavior. Because that guy now tells his friend, oh, dude, yeah, I sent this chick a picture of my dick.
Yeah, you know
it
what
totally
you-
worked. Did you know that works? And then his friend goes, like, what the fuck? I can just send a picture of my dick and it works? Like, and you have so much access to people that if you have the ability to send it to 100 different people and you have no shame in yourself and out of those 100 people, one of them is like, hey, what's up? Then, yeah, you're just going to get spammed.
It's usually how men mind, because we are very visual, right? That's why a lot of porns are directed to men and not women. But if you have like a 50 shades of gray, it's written and it's mainly focused on women because it's a different part of the brain that we access to be interested in each other. So the man, like, I mean, a lot of the men would actually be thrilled if the woman just sent like a picture of their boobs on the first date. The man, our mind is it is a little bit stupid, you know, like. So
simpler.
would you have sex with a girl because she sent a picture of her boobs? Of course. Like, you know, like a lot of guys that I know, like, yeah, man, sure.
That's interesting because I have had success by getting a conversation, not purposely necessarily, but getting it to a point of like dirty talk and stuff like that. And when you start, you know, maybe like painting pictures of like sexual situations and stuff, that ends up getting I mean, in my experience, women much more interested sexually than like, oh, here's my dick.
Yeah. The text, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
in
the-
text. Yeah.
yeah,
So they
yeah.
read,
Yeah.
you know, like you're saying with 50 Shades of Grey. That's an
Yep.
interesting way to put it.
But I think too what somebody said earlier about like this is like a primal instinct, but it's also like, you know, dick pics and stuff and nude photos back and forth is like an experimentation because this is like a new medium of dating and
Yeah.
flirting where we don't know what else to do. Like you
Yeah.
get to a point where it's just like you get so many people on the go, so many, I don't know, conversations that lead to nowhere that maybe some people just don't know what else to do, so they send their dick pic out there
true.
and
That's
hope
true.
that it's going to stimulate some sort of attraction or whatnot.
Interesting.
Do you think that like because I don't know, I know most of you guys here, like I know that you probably wouldn't send that and think like, yeah, man, she's gonna be very interested. That's because it is a big difference between like a primitive way of thinking that your genitals would make them interested, and actually doing so. You know, like it's a big limp.
Leap.
Yeah.
It's a big leap between like these two
Cognitive
things, you know?
behavior and just
I mean,
instincts.
how many people do you actually know that would do that? My friends.
Not that you know,
I
man, but
don't-
it
I-
happens all the time.
No, but I like most of my friends. I can totally say that they probably wouldn't like send a dick pic in the
Right.
like for getting a date. And thank God I have friends like that. But like,
Well, not at first, right? Like that's
that's
the
the
one I
thing.
don't get. The one that it's just like that's the first thing you send. But you know, you like I'm sure you know people that have, you know, sent it at probably an inappropriate time.
Well, people.
whoa, you never know when it's appropriate. Like, you probably
It's
if
only
you're dating
in
a
my-
woman and she likes it.
my
let's just
rule
have
of
a
thumb-
meeting.
My rule of
Just have
thumb
a
is
meeting.
I'm not
It's
sending nudes unless I get nudes first.
Oh,
Seems like a pretty good way to.
it's
Or
good
if
to
they
know.
ask, you know,
It's good to know.
Even then, I'm like,
Birthday.
birthday.
I don't know.
What you said?
If they ask,
What do you think,
Oh, if
Kyler?
they ask.
Well, it's like I think like when it comes to people who send a dick pic right off the first, I think there is a long history of like the normal way of trying to converse with people before that, and it gets to this point of I'm just gonna send my dick out to see who's interested.
So there are people that are just like frustrated with the normal
Yeah.
way or can't function the
if
normal
you
way.
think
really.
about it, it's a more efficient way, like from
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my
'cause
point.
you
is
can
it's kind
talk
of
to so many more
disgustingly-
people
yeah.
in something like Tinder, where you have like, let's say 20 or 30 matches, and you just have a list of people that you can talk to for something like that, right?
Well,
So how do you make that conversation the most effective? You just send out a bunch of cheap ways to connect with the person, because it's a long list, so you still have the same chance.
But
to
that's
connect
it's
somehow.
probably also of what you want to do with that. If you want the person to have actually a connection, or if you just want to.
You
fuck.
wouldn't even go on Tinder.
that's
no,
not true.
that's not true, man. I have my friend lives with a woman that he met on Tinder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
it-
there's
Tinder
always
has
been
shifted. When
opinions
when
about
Tinder
that.
first started, it was that. It was like, well, it was perceived as a purely a way to hook up. If you want to hook up, you go on Tinder, and that's how you meet.
I'd say
Well,
most people
that's
that
the
meet up.
thing.
Sorry, man. Most people that meet up there end up only doing it once. You know, I think that's
Most
sort of
people, yeah,
the-
I would say that. But I would say that about life in general. Most people that meet up end up only with each other once and then move on.
I
Like
guess so,
it's
yeah.
it's less common to
Uh.
to be dating somebody than it is to have sex with random people, I guess.
Well, I think that's the
complicated
thing that ties kind of this in is that, you know, when you kind of backtrack the history of online dating, it started with actual kind of profile, chat, meet, date.
Yeah.
You know, now we're kind of in the mentality, a hookup mentality, and you know they credit Grindr to being the kind of startup for that. Is that this hookup mentality of who's nearby, who wants to do it, and who wants to, you know, just one night, one stand, next person. And I think we've kind of adapted that culture, especially us, because we're like new to this. And this hookup mentality is why people are just so inclined to just get to the meat of things.
Grindr,
no pun
you said?
intended.
What do you think? Do you think something like Grindr is a little bit, well, I don't know about different, but like the male libido is a totally different animal than the female's libido, right? And so like, I don't know, like the people that I've chatted with that are of the gay community tend to say, yeah, Grindr is definitely more of like people just like show up at my house and like I don't even know them, and then we have sex, and then that's like it,
And then they just leave after.
and that's kind of just like the way at least
the
that
male
guy's community
yeah.
works anyways. I don't know.
But that's how Tinder started. Tinder was like the solution for straight people for this hookup mentality, right? Like gay people were getting laid all the time with this app. The Tinder developers kind of took the same mentality to it and used it for this.
Did Grindr?
But something
Grindr.
that we
I
as
call it
men
Grindr.
Did it came before Tinder?
Yeah, it did.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
know
wow.
that.
But something that we as men don't really get in the straight side of things in the Tinder forum is that women don't respond to the same types of things
Well,
as
exactly.
we do,
Yeah.
right?
No.
And so, I don't know. Maybe on Grindr, just sending a picture of your junk works.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No?
I was talking to a gay guy that actually he's not gay. His roommate is gay.
Okay.
So he says that 3 or 4 times a week the roommate says, "Hey man, can you arrive home later because I have a date on Grindr?" And it's like usually 3 or 4 different guys a week, which I don't think there's nothing wrong with it. I just think that we got to a point that everything is so fast paced. Like even dating has to be like, okay, you come here, we fuck, and then you go to your house because I have to sleep because I have to wake up very early in the morning.
Yeah.
And then like we put pressure on everything, and like even sex now it's I think a lot of males would, if they could just like jump to the part that they come, they would do it. You know?
Yeah, and that's something that I think we got to credit the current state of like online porn and stuff. Like you watch porn to get off, and then you're kind of you don't have to deal with any of the in between stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like we're in a weird cultural shift, I think, in terms of you've got like look at Japan, for example, where like relationships aren't a thing really anymore.
No.
And there's like a decline in reproductive. I can't cite facts and stuff because my brain doesn't work so good. But you can go in and you can read these articles about how there's a shift in the mindset of the youth in Japan, where it's kind of like, why do I have to do this relationship stuff? I can go right to all these devices, all these toys, all these virtual things, and virtual reality porn is a whole new thing that's gonna start a whole new revolution, right? And I think that kind of credits part of this hookup mentality is people just want to hook up and not deal with the relationship status.
And it's arguable whether or not that's a good or bad thing, right? Like we're overpopulated as it is, so
It definitely is population control.
Yeah, so if people are able to, because I mean, the fact of the matter is, a lot of like baby boomer and stuff like that is the result of religious fundamentalism towards things like birth control and stuff like that, and sex in general, as far as like waiting until marriage and these types of things, and we've undergone a cultural shift of, well, half of those people are divorced now, and our generation doesn't really look at marriage, I don't think, even close to the same way.
Another good factor in that as well too is that when you had kids back in the day, you had kids to make a workforce.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
It's child
Work
labor
the farm,
in a way. Work the farm. Like there was a purpose to having big families and stuff, but we've kind of weaned off of that.
And now there's a purpose to not having families. Like
exactly.
If you're a young couple or whatever, get married, mid-20s or even like in your 30s or something, it's like, why do I want to strap myself to a kid or whatever? Even if you're not married, you can be with people for however long, and you just don't want to strap yourself to a kid and be with these people. And people are getting more into the idea of a relationship or a marriage as like the bond between these two people. And if they want to share kids and have stuff like that, then that's up to them. But the mentality towards that has totally changed with our generation, to the point of like, but we still want to have sex,
right?
So
and it kind of leads to this gap in between meaningful relationships and hookups. And just to cycle back what you were saying about relationships these days is like in families, it's like financially, how do you afford to have a family? Especially our generation in Vancouver. You've got 40 grand worth of student debts to pay off. You can barely afford a place to live here.
Yeah.
Well, like by yourself.
Yeah.
And
With
how
a
do you-
roommate even or something
Exactly.
like that. Yeah.
And how do you plan, like even minimum wage workers, like how would you plan to bring a kid into this? Like how do you afford that?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, when you're in a relationship, you have the two sides of income,
Right.
like supporting you. But at the same time, like that's a huge expense.
Yeah.
So it's almost kind of out of reach for people to have kids like they did back then. You know, like contemporary families are in a total shift right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of the reason why there's less and less kind of reproduction going on in our culture anyway, because we've shifted off of these means of why we procreate in terms of like we're fading from religious reasons and also fading from this kind of like task force reasons. You know, like we don't have farms anymore.
Yeah.
Most of us are kind of diverting away from Christianity, Catholicism, whatever, you know.
And we're not really fighting extinction or something like that.
Well, no, yeah.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
We are fighting extinction, I think, personally. We're just like not blissfully ignoring it as the world burns and tries to shake us off of it.
Yeah. I think the only difference that, like for instance, for the dinosaurs, it was a comet, but for it's gonna be we are our own comets. You know, like we're gonna extinct ourselves.
What do you think about something like this? Sorry, go on.
No, I just wanted to make I like the trend of thought that you were talking about Japan and all the technology relating to sex.
Well, and it's not even Japan. This decline is in Europe too. Like
a friend of mine told me about this new technology that like you put like the virtual reality glasses, and they have a device that simulates a vagina or a mouth.
Yeah.
So you don't actually distinguish between what is real and what is not. And when they make the tests like inside of the brain and like nowadays they can see the areas that lights up whenever you see those things.
The stimulated
the
parts.
Same areas. So like the brain, even though like your conscious on the back might know it, but your brain in general does not know the difference between real sex and that stimulation virtual reality. Now that brings a big problem to us because like it's tough to have a relationship, but you learn so fucking much, man. Like you suffer and you go through things, but if you don't have a relationship, or if you're never in a relationship, or if you're ever in hookups, you really don't take as much as you really don't learn as much as you would do if you had a relationship, you know?
Yeah, dude, but I think that all of that change in the needs that humans are going to have based on what is demanded of them through these virtual worlds is going to completely change the way we interact with people.
Well, I agree to some point with that. It's kind of like everybody's fighting this loneliness, right? I think people who hook up all the time are internally very lonely.
Yeah.
You know, they either don't know how to commit or they don't know how to situate themselves to a point where they're satisfied.
And looking for it
themselves.
online and on videos and on virtual things and even on texting, something so superficial like that, because it's easy.
Yeah. And we're always craving some sort of stimulation. And I think and that's also kind of what I'm thinking of as the problem with these, dating apps. So there's hundreds of dating apps these days. Swipe left, swipe right, yada, 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 choose who you want to talk to. And it's a very, like you said, superficial way of doing things. I don't know where I was going.
Yeah, no, it's totally inorganic. Like, we were talking about it off air. Like, some of us are from, or were we off air? I don't know. But some of us are from, were we off air?
Maybe.
Yeah, we're from a different generation where, if you called on the phone, that was on air, wasn't it? I'll have to cut that out.
The MSN, yeah. We had to actually, like, I remember being in grade 9. It's like, I was talking to a friend. I was like, oh, should I ask this girl out to go on a date through MSN? And, we were talking about this earlier, and it's like, you get criticized for it. It's like, you said, no, there's only fucking losers do that. So I asked her in person, and of course I got shut down immediately.
Yeah,
and you deal with that rejection in the moment.
I think that dealing even with that face-to-face rejection,
it's
like
part of growth.
You need to have that,
man,
because inevitably it will happen.
Yeah,
even in the case of a Tinder, if it doesn't, man, I'll tell you some stories of people that lose their minds when it does happen. Like,
what if it doesn't ever, and we enter that sort of world?
I think the only time, because nobody is 100% success rate on Tinder dates. Even the most attractive woman in the world.
Virtual, entirely virtual.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to, like, 1 second with regards to that, back to kind of it being more organic as far as just meeting people. Like, with the way something like Tinder works, you know, you're purely basing it on, okay, this person is attractive to me, which, I mean, in real life, you base that on too, obviously.
Looks first, bio second. That's what you always look at.
But, like, even the bio is... Like, my bio says I'm a time-traveling robot from the past. Like, it's nothing. But it's a joke to get people, you know, to... You know, and then you have a conversation about it. But when you meet somebody through something like that, you don't really know if you have common interests. And so you sit down, and the first date is not oh, hey, we hit it off at this party, so let's continue that conversation.
Right.
It's automatically... So you're looking for something between each other to connect to, rather than already having had that connection and it being the reason you're out on this date in the first place.
Well, and to add to that is like you build these expectations of people. Like you build this different version of this person.
Yeah, that's true.
Through your screen. So when you meet them in person, it doesn't line up with what you saw on their profile.
Yeah, not necessarily.
I could post all sorts of kind of outdoorsy photos of myself. I'm not really an outdoorsy guy. I don't go on adventure hikes all the time. But like, if I posted all those photos and I said like, oh, I like going on adventures, but really, you know, I just like chilling and watching Netflix all day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's planet Earth though, so.
Well, yeah.
I like nature.
But then you somebody who sees that and is just like, oh, he's got the same interests as me, but it doesn't line up that way, you know.
And going to kind of the virtual thing, I don't know, like JWoww, we were just talking not that like a few episodes ago about how porn is not sex. You know, like I would venture to say that it fires the same things in our brain, but like the ability to physically touch somebody and like feel their sweat and feel like the way that they are actually reacting to you. Like Alexis and I talked about energy and energy levels and stuff last week, and how like we're all made of energy, and so we're all giving off these different levels of radiation and stuff, and those change depending on what your body is doing, and if you're that close to somebody, you're feeling them, you're feeling their heat, you're feeling their heartbeat, you're like all of that stuff plays into how you react to the sex too. And so if it's just a fucking thing on your dick that's simulating a vagina or mouth, or vice versa, a dildo or whatever it is your game, like it's not ever going to give you the same intimacy.
Well, and that's how you.
And that's how you build connections between people. So like you're talking about masturbation versus sex, really, which is what we talked about with. And sometimes sex is that for people. Sometimes people have no respect for their partners, you know, or feelings
no connection.
Or no connection.
Respect.
Yeah, respect is no respect for their pleasure, I guess, would be, or no regard for their pleasure. It's like, we're going to have sex and I'm going to have sex and, you know, I'm going to do my thing. And if you don't, then I don't care or whatever. Some people take that approach to sex.
To a relationship or an encounter like that would only be focused on the pleasure part of it, which was what you can compare it to with something virtual or something like porn and masturbation, you know?
Yeah.
Well, it comes down to stimulation versus intimacy.
Exactly.
And to cycle back to what JWoww said earlier, it's like, how do you grow as a person if you're not intimate with another human being? Like we strive to either be a part of something. Like it's in our DNA. Like this is what we do. We either go to be part of a group, whether that's you're a fan of a sports team, that stimulates like back to being in a tribe, right? You're part of a tribe because you're with people.
Totally.
And then we strive to be with somebody in terms of survival in this relationship of intimacy. Yeah. That, you know, we don't feel lonely anymore.
Yeah, and those times that I've had like intimate relationships with people, which you know are a few, like only like 3 people, you know, like very intimate love relationships and stuff. Those people, they imprint something on your personality. Like I have things that I've carried over from all serious girlfriends that have just become part of me now, and without, you know, a real sort of connection with somebody, you never really reach that point. Well, I mean, like, I don't want to say that because we have friends and stuff that have met people through these devices and have fallen in love and love each other and whatever. But
yes, but I think so. Just like maybe to separate a little bit. So what you said before about energy and connection and everything is something that it exists through sex and everything, but I think it's gonna be more rare and rare and rare, and that's it. It's already happening.
It's just gonna be something that gets faded out.
It's being
it
filtered
could,
out.
you know,
Interesting.
like
That's
an evolutionary
depressing
trait.
thought. That's a
this
really
is already
depressing thought.
happening, man.
Yeah.
Because that's so the content. It's almost as if we only see the image, but we don't see the content. So the image, it's like a porn. You know, the image is like
What stimulates it.
yeah, the guy finishes, and
But what if something-
the content is different, man.
What if something like porn changes completely? Like,
it is changing?
what
as
if
well.
it evolves into something that is targeted to not only stimulate that immediate release?
If you see there's art porn, which is really beautiful. Actually, they made films, but then the target, it's the women. A lot of times.
The target is to evolve. Of course, it's like they even put it in a category as like porn for women, but I think the target is really to change the need for people to watch porn and the experience of it too. You know, it's like it's the same thing with something like video games, where the worlds are evolving so fast into I don't know, like something that's going to be completely indistinguishable from what we see now. You know. And I think
yes and no. Like, I mean, I think there's a difference between simulating like a bullet hitting you in the chest because you're playing a video game with like a vest on or something, and it gives you the impact or whatever.
Does that exist?
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it definitely will in the short future.
Virtual reality.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, you should.
Like that's what Ready Player
Get the
One is
patent
all
out there.
about. It's about entering a
Yeah.
game where you can like feel. Like
As
they,
if you
like
were
the
there.
machine that they have even like sprays like mist and stuff that gives them the scent of whatever they're walking around and things like that. So like, but I think, I mean, the ultimate question of stuff like that is it real? Like, where does that line?
real. What does real mean to you?
Right, where does that line change? I mean, for me, I would say, you know, as real as that can possibly be. Like, I can't imagine.
No, but what is real to you? How would you categorize?
I was gonna
something
say
as
I
real?
can't imagine not like having a simulated actual touch feeling. You know, like the actual, like if I touch this virtual person in this world, it feels like skin felt. But the thing is if you don't really, if you've never experienced that, I guess, if you've never actually been intimate with another person and felt their sweat and all that type of stuff, you wouldn't know what that actually felt like. It's kind of like the Matrix question of well, do the machines know what our food tastes like? Maybe it tastes like, you know, maybe what we think tastes like tasty wheat is actually like chicken or tuna fish. You know, like at that point, if you've grown up, you know, let's say in like 20, 30 years from now, and you have kids that have grown up with this type of thing, they won't know what the
difference.
real thing is.
It's like if you only were able to experience something that tastes like apple, but it's not an apple, but that's the only thing that you taste.
Yeah,
And
you'll
then
never
you
know if it's
apple
actually what the apple tastes like.
Yeah.
That's what Plato's cave is all about. But just think of something like dreams. Dreams, you're not physically touching anyone, at least not in the reality that we experience most of the time, or what we believe as being awake. But when you're dreaming, you have the same exact physical reactions even, you know? When you're afraid, you sweat when you're asleep.
Yeah.
Or cry, you know, you wake up crying or something, or I mean like wet dreams with it, which is what people talk about. You
Yeah,
know?
but I would still argue that I mean, whether you're asleep or not, if somebody's touching you, your brain is registering that. And so
But it's the same thing if you imagine something, your brain is also registering it as something.
But it
Like-
I
comes-
don't
comes
know
down
enough to say whether or not what I'm about to say is true, but I would argue that it's different.
One is stimulation.
That one is physical stimulation and one is simulated stimulation that your brain remembers from when you've been touched before, but is not that touch. It's I've been touched before, and so I know what touch
remembering
feels
and
like.
going back.
But this individual touch from that specific person,
changes.
It's more
It's
direct.
different. It's
more direct.
always
Yeah.
going to be different. Even that specific person, every time they touch you, depending on how they're feeling, will be different. Because how they're feeling, again, the heat and all that type of stuff that they're giving off will be a different feeling than it was the previous time.
But this
Well,
is
you-
all it's possible to recreate by computers.
I don't know if that's
You-
true, man.
Yes,
So,
yes,
man.
yes,
The
and
only
no.
thing that we can't, it's something that we cannot put in words, and then like that's what sex is. It's so interesting because it's not only like, you know, a lot of times it's not only about bodies, but it's also about a connection. So that type of connection, in my opinion, is the thing that you cannot replace.
Replicate, yeah.
You know, you cannot replicate.
We got to look at the body chemistry behind this too. Like even a simple
That's
hug
true.
for 4 seconds. You know, your body goes into your blood pressure lowers.
Totally.
It goes into like a relaxation mode. They say like, you know, people who aren't, or at least get like a hug every day or something like that tend
Yeah.
to live longer too, because your body isn't in this constant, I guess, stress, flight or fight mode. You know, it's kind of like I don't know, a drug almost. Like
Yeah.
your body releases endorphins when you have that physical human connection. I don't think you'll ever be able to recreate that with any machine or any kind of, unless you're being plugged into a machine. Like,
Well, that's the
you have to
argument, though. The
separate-
argument is like that's not like it's not science fiction anymore.
Well, no.
That is going to happen. Like in our lifetime, people will be able to enter a video game in their mind. In my opinion, like I think that's coming in my lifetime for sure.
But I think your brain will have to be somehow tricked or triggered in a certain way in order for it to
It's all a
to lose
simulation.
this conscious part of you that knows this isn't real.
Right, but if
you
the
know?
brain is what is interpreting everything,
Yeah.
If
yeah, again, like it's like the idea of like Kraft cheese singles versus cheddar cheese. Kraft cheese singles do not taste like cheddar cheese,
Yeah.
but we associate them with cheese. We call it cheese, so it's cheese on like a bunch of different stuff.
That's the only way you should make grilled cheese sandwiches, by the way.
But it's
Only.
not cheese, right? And so, I mean, like, no matter how hard they've tried, and
Yeah.
they have tried,
Yeah.
it does not taste like real cheese. And so, as much as we call it cheese, and as much as future generations might only have that as cheese, it will not be what cheese was.
Yeah, but that's, you know, this is actually when you look at it. But people, a lot of times, like in their daily basis, they just eat. They don't ask if it is or not.
Right.
And I, like, some people, of course.
The sound spikes so hard when I fucking...
Debate over! Well, I'm right, so I'm not gonna say anything else. But I think this time, like, of course, and then you have like the other type of people that like eat organics and like non-gluten free stuff.
Well,
you know, like it's another.
Well, I'm using the cheese as an allegory
For sex.
for real or not real,
Yeah,
right? Like
real food rather than
like even if they manage to like, okay, well, this is what brains do when, or this is what this person's brain does, or these like 10 people that we studied in order to program this fucking computer, this is what their brain does when they have sex.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to program into this computer. And so it's basically like an average algorithm of what these people feel that they're going to plant into your brain. And that's what sex is for everybody. Okay? And so, or, you know, maybe there's a few different variations of it or whatever. But for the most part, just like the commentary in your NHL video game doesn't actually really keep up with what you're doing. It's all pre-recorded stuff.
Yeah.
That sexual feeling is a pre-recorded thing. So again, like as much as like future generations might consider that sex because that's how they have sex now,
Because they wouldn't know any different.
because they wouldn't know any
Yeah,
different.
That's nature.
It's not sex.
It's true.
And we might be like, we might end up being old grumpy hipsters like 6 years old and be like, sex was way better when I was a kid. And we might be the first generations actually fucking right about it.
I like fucking right. Fucking right is a very good way of putting. Oh, very good way of putting. Nice. That was a nice metaphor as well. But
yeah.
there's a film back in the days. It's not the Terminator. It's also about the future.
The Sixth Day.
I don't know, but there's a scene
It's got Schwarzenegger
where,
in
I think it's with
the hologram chick.
It's not the hologram chick. It's like they went and this girl invite the guy. It's future. It's like 2050 when they thought that 2050 in the 80s, 2050 was going to be like that, and now I'm pretty sure we only have like probably Twitter will have 300 characters, or that's would be the big change.
I still don't understand how that works. I can't do it.
I'm not a Twitter person either. Yeah,
but yeah, so
should be with a show like this.
Like in this film, I remember the woman comes to the guy and she's like, and the guy's frozen for 30 years. So she come to the guy and she was like, "Do you want to have sex?" And the guy's like really surprised and he said, "Yeah." And like he starts stripping and she's like, "What you doing? What the fuck are you doing?" I was like, "I'm getting ready to sex." No. So each one of them go to a different bed, put like a
it's Judge Dredd.
Yeah,
it's like the terrible Stallone Judge Dredd movie. Yeah.
But the idea is really interesting though.
Yeah.
The idea is really interesting.
Yeah. They put like basically what we have is virtual reality goggles now. They put them on and have quote unquote sex with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like flashes of, like even like porn nowadays. Like I know a lot of people that watch, and whenever I watch, is like it's not the whole film.
It's just like the
parts
10-minute segments. Yeah,
it's the segments.
Here's a 2-minute clip of the setup.
2-minute
clip of the blowjob. 2-minute clip of the eating out.
Right, it's scary.
Well, they must have. I guarantee that happened because they are tracking what everybody's doing on those sites, and they realize that people are just like skipping every like 5 or 6 minutes in these 30-minute long
that
clips.
Attention span problem we were talking about.
Well, it's like okay, I get it. Yeah, they're neighbors. Okay, next. Yeah, okay, cool. She's You
only need to understand so much of the plot before you're more interested in the fight than the actual context of it.
Yeah.
But even when it's not the plot, when they're fucking like, okay, skip. Skip. Okay, blowjob. Skip.
Well, you're trying to figure out what stimulates you. Like you go into these moments of max stimulation for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You're not investing the time. Like there's no intimacy with porn, right?
Okay,
that cycles back, I guess, a little bit. But we should cycle back maybe.
We should. Yeah, I want to cycle back a little bit to
the problems of online dating.
Yeah,
Tinder.
and just coming at it from a perspective of somebody that grew up without that type of thing, right? For the first little bit of our dating. And now I'm really seeing this shift. And I've had a couple instances where I'm like, I have no idea how to interact with women anymore.
Yeah.
Or like, for me personally anyways, like how to interact with women anymore. Like it's, especially with sexual harassment stuff coming out, like that really like makes me guarded and aware of how I'm behaving around women, which it should. But it also, makes me kind of paranoid of how I behave around women. Am I being creepy or whatnot, or like whatever, or like
I think you should just be like, when it comes to something like that, is we need to be aware that we're not only talking to a single person. Everything that we do now is sort of a shared consciousness of what happens to us. So whatever. Like that's why the whole Me Too hashtag happened, because now everyone sort of knows what everyone is thinking all the time. So you can't really hope that it's like a direct influence.
No, it's just like it. Yeah, I mean, I think we're really in a culture shift right now, trying to navigate not only how men and women are relating to each other as far as sexual misconduct and stuff is concerned, but also how we're relating to each other, dating wise with these apps and stuff like that. And just how we not even dating, but how we communicate in general, has really changed how I personally start to approach these things. Like, so, okay, a story is we've all been ghosted on Tinder, I'm sure. One of the problems. It happens, right? Yeah. Well, that's one of the problems is like, well, I have these 30 other people that have said I was hot. So
Yeah.
for some reason, I'm going to talk to them instead of this person that actually was interested in me. But yeah, so get ghosted on this thing. She comes back a little while later. We end up going out and we have a really nice night. And we end up like making out and having a fun time, but we don't end up going all the way, which is fine. It's late. It's the middle of the week or whatever. And then later on, she's texting me like naked pictures of herself and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, well, this is on. And so the next day I give her a note and nothing. And the next day I send her another note and nothing. And so I think 3 days in a row I sent her just like a single text message just to say what's up and got no response. And then my brain started really like kind of going into like weird overdrive of, well, she's my age, so maybe she is like wants something a little bit more assertive. She seemed like she liked assertive guys and stuff like that, so maybe I should just like call her. And I ran that by a couple of my girlfriends, and they're like, nah, that like that's a terrible idea. And then I thought it was like, yeah, you know what, if I went out with somebody and for whatever reason was disinterested in them and they messaged me, I mean, it wasn't a creepy amount, just a few times, but then called me, I would be like, oh, fuck no. But in times past, again, like that's how you interacted with people. And so like, especially when I'm trying to court women who are my own age, you're not really sure which part of this generation they have their foot in and which part do they want to be approached by me, or are they going to be creeped out by being approached by me because they're 25 and under versus 25 plus or something like that.
Wait, I have a question about your story.
Okay.
So you guys made out, and then the next day she sent a picture of her naked?
No, that was like the night of.
No way. Sorry.
So like we went out,
yeah,
and we were making out in her car or in my car and stuff,
yeah,
and like didn't go any further than that because she was tired or whatever.
Okay.
And so, but when I got home,
yeah,
she started messaging me pictures of her naked.
Okay, so maybe that's one of the only times that it's right to send a dick pic.
Oh, it got into that. Like I said, okay. I'll reciprocate if it comes my way first.
Did she immediately just lose interest after you sent the pic?
No, she was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about." She was like, "Yeah."
'Cause I've got a similar
story. She asked me to send two, actually. She's like, "Yeah." Anyway.
Okay.
A high angle, low angle.
Yeah.
Close up.
Two different or two of your own.
Two of my own.
Okay.
Is your roommate? Can you send me a picture of your roommate's
I just want to compare.
Yeah, it was a very strange situation.
It is strange, man. I don't think that. I think then that's a little bit of paranoid that we like. I share with you sometimes, like the feeling of like, oh, did I do something wrong, or am I gonna fuck this up, or blah, blah, blah. But this is not happening right now. I remember when I was like, especially when we were like teenagers, we really didn't know what to do. Man, should I send a message? Man, should I do this? Man, should I? You know, like I think
I find it myself worsely. I think it's worse that I'm more affected and I don't care about being rejected anymore.
Right?
Because it happens so much. Like it happened a lot before, just to men, like, you know, face to face when we would have to do that. But now the fact that it happens like
what happens through a device
and constantly, we get so used to doing the same thing. I'm not saying it doesn't go both ways. But then like I've been on like actual dates, you know, with people that I've met, you know, face to face and stuff like that. And, you know, it doesn't go well or whatever, and you're talking, and it's like, I don't think there's going to be another date. I'm just kind of like, okay, cool, thanks. And, cool, like, that's a nice, like, that's probably the best way you can take it, but at the same time, I was thinking about it, I'm like, I am so apathetic towards that. Like, I don't care if there was something I did that made her not want to like me or, like, whatever. Like, I really, and maybe that's just me being like, well, she doesn't like me, and so, like, I'll find somebody who does or whatever. But, I think part of it is just an apathy towards the whole scenario of dating built on this kind of, I don't even think that it's always there, but it's like, it's just this immediacy that builds a apathy towards commitment either way. Yeah, just like even the commitment of, well, I like this person, and so I'm going to actually go full out into showing them on this date. It's kind of like, do I need to go full out because they're gonna probably just ghost me anyways, and so.
Well, I want to touch on that ghosting part too. Is just like that's part of this like problem that we have is like what you guys were just talking about is like you and I've been through this too. Is like you develop this anxiety, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this person hasn't messaged me back. Do I go again? Am I being too clingy? And it's like those are almost like I don't know what you would say social stereotypes or whatnot is like, and it's like like a virgin, for example, this you see in movies is like they're supposed to become real clingy and whatnot and attached and then it's almost presented as this gross thing. So the Wedding Crashers is a great example. Have you ever saw that when what's her face hooks up with what's his
Stage
face?
5 clinger.
The Stage 5 clinger, right?
Isla Fisher and Vince Vaughn.
And it's like presented as this thing like you must avoid at all costs. So like
Well, in their scenario, yeah. For what they were trying to get, yeah.
But it somehow ties in with this mentality of like this hookup mentality and of ghosting because nobody is like wants to be honest about it.
Yeah.
There's two things that happen. It's like one, they just unmatch or remove themselves.
Yeah.
Or two, it's like they carry it on, they drag it out without ever moving it forward. Like
Right.
I'm going through this.
Just continue to talk to you,
Yeah.
sort of, and like so are we
I'm-
gonna go out? Like, yeah, next week, next week.
I'm going through this situation with this person right now. Like we hung out one time and things went good, and then it's like I text him and it's like, okay, I don't hear anything back. Like, okay, what did I do wrong? Did I do something? Should I go through the same process you did? It's like, okay, if I call, if I do too much, is this clingy? So I step back, and then this person proceeds to only communicate through Snapchatting, and it's like, okay, well, like why can't we just set something up outside of Snapchat? Like why are we using this media platform that's there and go
safe.
yeah
'Cause it's the
like
future,
maybe
man.
it's the future but it's like 4 weeks now where it's like I've tried hey, what are you doing this weekend? You want to hang out or whatnot? But it's just like you get to this point where you've been strung along for so long that you have to realize that this is a form of ghosting.
Yeah.
It's like this person doesn't know how to say I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And is too nice maybe to just unmatch. Like
Yeah.
maybe there was a connection, but they've lost interest, or what I call the shopper market, the shopping effect of you're in the store and you see 16 different kinds of deodorant brands. Which one smells best?
Yeah.
You go for this one, but next week you're going for this one. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like that is the mentality of these apps, right? It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
sometimes I
no,
go-
definitely.
No, yeah.
You know,
There's a
it's
lot of
tough
points to
though.
throw in.
What I find tough about it is like the panic that we're talking about sets in because we're used to an immediate response.
Yeah.
Like again, going back to when we were younger, I mean, we didn't really feel it because this thing happened pretty early on, like for me anyways, like into my dating life as far as like, 2023, I guess, like this Tinder thing really started to show up. But I know for like parents and stuff like that, and for an older generation, it's totally common to wait a few days to hear from somebody.
Yeah.
And like the idea of phoning somebody and leaving a message and not hearing from them for a day was not like panic mode.
Yeah,
it was normal.
It's a normal
and it
thing.
was like, usually people get back to me in like a day or whatever, and if they don't in like a week, then it's obviously not a thing. And in that week, you didn't sit there thinking like, is she calling me or are they calling me? It was I'm living my life and maybe they will call me. Like, and now it's because it's in our pocket all the time. You send your message, and especially if you are interested in getting a response from this person, you're constantly just like hitting the button on your phone.
Yeah.
Even if you don't hear it, my phone is on silent most of the time, which is a problem because I'm not going to hear it, which means I need to see it
You need
in
to
order
check
to
it every couple seconds.
Yeah.
Well, and our brains are so trained to have instantaneous response, to
Yeah.
have immediate action. That notification needs to happen.
Yeah, and it's not just
Like-
personal dating stuff. It's workplace. It's everything.
It's
yeah.
everything. It's
Communication.
texting. It's like it doesn't make sense that I've just texted you, you responded, then you don't text back for a few hours. Like we kind of don't
Yeah.
perceive that.
Well, it's
maybe
because
this
we know. We know. I know your phone's in your pocket.
Yeah,
Like,
right. but we're so kind of self-absorbed that we don't perceive like for example, like when I'm working on set, I'll read a text message
And then put it away.
something gets called on
Yeah.
the radio. I put my phone away. 4 hours later, I'm like, oh yeah, I read this, and it's like we kind of don't clue into those.
but people like I've been with people that are kind of on both sides of the fence on something like that, where they're like they totally get it and they love it. The
Yeah.
fact that I'm not like constantly on my phone and responding and stuff like that. And some people are like, I saw like you read my text and didn't respond back for like a
Get
whole day.
offended
Like,
by
what
it.
is that about? And
Yeah.
I'm like, look, like exactly like you said, like sometimes I check my phone and get onto something else and forgot. Like, it's not a big deal.
But
Sorry,
it
you're
is-
not on my brain literally all the time. Like,
It is to some people just in terms of how rewired like we become
Yeah.
with these devices.
yeah,
It's very. It brings a lot of anxiety.
It
yeah,
does.
Yeah,
It does.
it's crazy. man.
Especially in relationships. I think I've been in past relationships where it's really tough not answering back like right away. You know, like person get really mad and like. It's
Well, it's in relationships and in something like family too, you know, because like now kids and younger people that are with their parents have a phone all the time with them.
Yeah.
So they have that receptor in that moment all
Yeah.
the time. And when they don't respond to their parents or something like that, the panic and the anxiety also exists in that, right? So it's a whole communications of society. in
Jerry,
general.
when I would like to ask you about
Yep.
just getting back to
Right.
dating. You've been in Mexico for a while now.
Yeah,
You-
a couple
you
months.
wanted
Yeah.
How is dating different there than here? How do you
I mean, the thing is,
how do you perceive like did technology actually put everything in the same basket, or do we have like still significant differences between?
I'd say that almost everything that happens on this side of the world is influenced by directly from the United States and Canada, of course. So even like the social interactions like that get sort of transferred and they spread everywhere in the world. I'm sure you've seen that in Brazil
Yeah.
too, with pop culture and all that stuff. But yeah, something like the way really well, just in general, and you'll get this, our Latino way of communication is just completely different from what they do, especially in something like relationships.
it is totally different.
Completely. Well, just in the way that we talk, right? And the way that you talk with someone that's
Well, yeah, but I've also like I've been on a few like dates and stuff like that with women from Mexico or from Brazil,
Right.
and the way they interact with you can be confusing
it's
because
just
it's
completely
very
different. It's a different culture.
right.
entirely.
But
It's
even
very
if they're
wet.
not like
It's very
even if they're not attracted to you,
uh-huh.
it's very touchy feely and
Okay.
and ooh
It's
and
very
so when
s-
it's
it
very
seems
kind of
sexy. It's very
sensual and
okay,
like
sensual.
even in saying goodbye to you,
It's
it's always
physical.
like kisses and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Which is something that is obviously normal for them, but
It's
it's
normal for
it's
us.
different for us, right? And so like if a date doesn't go particularly like well and it's not really doing anything, but then she kisses me at the end of the night, it's kind of like even on the lips, it's kind of like you're kind of weird, hard to read, you know?
On the lips?
It's
no,
a
but
different
not on the
culture
lip.
thing.
Yeah.
No,
Like
no.
on the chick, it's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but like, yeah, I don't know.
It's
Sometimes it floats
completely-
halfway in between, and it's just kind of like, what?
It's because it's something that's completely cultural, you know.
Yeah.
We do that with our families, you know. Like every man says, like when you say hi to a woman, you give her a kiss on the cheek,
Mhm.
and that's a European thing too.
Yeah,
So it's just a different physical connection that we
Mhm.
have to people.
It's true.
Well,
I like it, but it,
Me
it can
too,
be
I like
confusing
kiss, yeah.
sometimes.
I like.
Well, yeah, because and I think it's like this is something. I remember the first time I have two very good friends from Mexico City as well, and when I was a student, they would always give hugs.
Yeah.
and it's almost
Oh,
like
I
this,
love giving hugs.
right? But like, it's weird how in North America we're trained to have like this bubble.
Yeah,
but
it's
in,
true.
Like in South America and even Europe, like this bubble doesn't exist, and
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe that's like a whole other topic. It's like, why is it that we have this, like we distance ourselves so much in comparison to other cultures?
Yeah,
Is because we confuse intimacy and friendliness.
yeah.
Is that-
There's a whole other topic as
Yeah.
far as like how we treat like nudity versus violence and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
I think
so.
it's balanced in a different way though, because you guys have an ability to do something like small talk way more than we can, and
That's because there's
good.
nothing to do in Canada
No,
but
that's
stand
good
around and
because
smile.
we
About
in
the
our
weather.
countries have a tendency of just walking by people and never talking to them.
Oh, we do
At
that
least
here in
in-
the city as
At
well.
least in Mexico, because like we have a community of not really. It's not a community of trust as it is
Yeah.
here, and
I mean, like we have a different perspective on it because we're from Canada.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this
Well,
is
I'm
one of the
from
this
small
is,
town
yeah,
Canada.
and this is one of the biggest cities in Canada. So
Yeah.
like it seems cold, but like even the fact that if you're like walking by somebody on the street and you make eye contact and smile at each other, like that does not happen in like the States, like anywhere. No. Like, well, maybe in like California and places like that, but especially in like big bustling cities, it is like
people are afraid to show.
Not afraid, but they're just like, this weird person. Like, why are you being nice to me? Like, I'm not a part of your life. Like, get away from my life.
Yeah. I think I'm feeling this exactly what you're saying, like especially on sets. Like it's for me it's natural, just like, hi, how's it going? People just look at me like, why
are you talking to me? Yeah, like, for some reason there's this huge divide here of this gap of what's okay and like what's not in terms of just standard communication. Like
that's also
it's like you have to be in my social group in order for me to be friendly with you. It's weird. Like when you can't pass somebody on the street and smile at them or wave, is it like this divide in community, or is it like a divide in culture?
Well, I would say, I mean, this is kind of veering way off topic, but I would say that our perspective is flawed on that, because like this is like, if you want to have somebody say hi and wave to you on the street, then this is the place to be versus pretty much anywhere else in the world, because like even in the large cities,
especially in the large cities.
I mean, you see people, even like helping people and stuff like that like it just, we take it for granted, I think, a lot of the times, Canadian sort of politeness and niceness that just, it doesn't really happen especially in America, but in a lot of places in the world. Like there's affection, I think, in like Latin culture and stuff like that, physical affection with like your friends and stuff like that. But as far as like, I don't know, just kind of like, general friendliness and holding doors open for people and stuff like that, like we're pretty unique in that regard.
Thanking
thanking people, thanking people that help you just at like the store or whatever. Like even going to like order a coffee and saying please and thank you. It blows some Americans' minds.
But when you say like the physical part of the Latino cultures, like affection by touch and everything, we are physical in everything. Like our violence is pretty physical as well.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, and the dancing is very physical.
Yeah. But from my
anyway.
You had
just one more.
Yeah,
point.
go for it.
Like from my perspective, in a coming from small town Alberta, it's like if you wave to somebody and they don't wave back, and you know that person, it's like, oh well, why didn't they wave back to me? Did I do something wrong? Or
you know them.
But you know them. But even in this small town, it's like. You see somebody that you're not even associated with, but you just like you wave because you see them all the time, or you walk by them, and that's that community thing that happens, and that doesn't really translate over here. In the big cities, at least,
not as much. But
not as much.
Like if I'm walking down the street and I catch somebody's eye and I smile and they like scowl back at me, or like even just like avert their gaze, I immediately think that person's a dickhead.
Yeah,
I'm just being nice. Hey. Fuck yourself.
It's like a defense mechanism for some people. It's like, why are you being nice? What does this mean?
What do you want from me?
Yeah.
but there's also this obligation. It's interesting because...
Yeah, that's true.
Obligation is a good word there.
It's not very fair for me to think that person's a dick.
Yeah, like, but it's not only you. We are really, like a lot of times at the edge of like, I'm being nice, so you're obliged. I think that you're obliged to be nice to me. So I'm being nice. So if you're not, I'm immediately... I change and I get mad.
Yeah.
So it's like it flips right away.
Well, it's a code of society. There's a code of society anywhere that you live, and that's sort of if you go off it, then people react with confusion.
And that code is ever changing with our technology and stuff like that, which we will get into in the next break. I think, or we're gonna take a break here. In the next segment, we're gonna talk about social justice warriors and kind of like, internet pile-ons and that type of thing, and how they affect us going forward. So yeah, we'll take a break here on the Slack line and we'll play some Crooked Spies for you guys, and we'll be right back.
Nice.